Welcome to Topical Economics. If you're new here, don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell icon so you never miss any of our insightful videos on key economic concepts. In today's video, we're diving into the topic of mixed economic systems. I'll be walking you through some past paper multiple-choice questions, carefully analyzing each one to explain why the correct answer is what it is. Whether you're preparing for exams or just want to strengthen your understanding of economics, this video will help you get to grips with important concepts in a clear and practical way. So, let's get started. Starting with the first question. A government levies a specific tax on the supply of cigarettes. At the same time, it starts a campaign to explain the health risks of smoking cigarettes. Which diagram illustrates the effects on the demand and supply of cigarettes? This question is from year 2022 May-June version 2 paper. The correct answer for this question is option C. A specific tax, i.e., a tax of a fixed amount per unit, on the supply side of cigarettes would increase the cost of production or supply. This would shift the supply curve leftward or upward, because producers would require a higher price to supply the same quantity as before. The tax increases the price consumers must pay, which usually results in a decrease in the quantity demanded. A campaign highlighting the health risks of smoking would likely reduce the demand for cigarettes, as it could make consumers more aware of the negative health effects and thus deter consumption. This would shift the demand curve leftward, a decrease in demand. So, the two main effects are: supply curve shifts left, due to the tax, increasing the price for consumers. And the demand curve shifts left, due to the health awareness campaign, reducing the desire to consume cigarettes. This is very well seen in diagram in option C. Moving to the second question. China is moving towards a more mixed economic system and reducing the role of the public. Which economic policy measure might best achieve this? A. Creating excess capacity in state-owned enterprises. B. Encouraging competition among private sector firms. C. Protecting infant industries. D. Subsidizing transport infrastructure. This question is from year 2022 May-June version 3 paper. The correct answer for this question is option B, encouraging competition among private sector firms, because it directly supports the goal of moving towards a more mixed economic system by reducing the role of the public sector and promoting the private sector. As China transitions from a more state-controlled economy towards one that incorporates more market-driven forces, encouraging competition in the private sector is a key policy. By fostering a competitive environment, the government can encourage private firms to thrive, which reduces the reliance on state-owned enterprises, SOEs, and allows the market to play a greater role in determining production, pricing, and resource allocation. This aligns with the goal of reducing state intervention in the economy and encouraging private sector growth. In contrast, the other options would either increase the role of the state or not be as directly relevant to the goal of transitioning to a mixed system. For example, option A, creating excess capacity in state-owned enterprises would likely increase the role of state-owned firms, thus not contributing to reducing public sector involvement. Option C, protecting infant industries is a form of government intervention that would actually increase the state's role in the economy, as it typically involves subsidies or tariffs to protect domestic industries from international competition. Lastly, option D, subsidizing transport infrastructure represents another form of government spending that maintains or even increases state involvement in the economy, particularly in areas like infrastructure, which are often under public control. Thus, encouraging private sector competition, option B, is the most effective policy for China to reduce the role of state-owned enterprises and move towards a more mixed economic system, where both the state and the private sector play significant but balanced roles. Moving to the third question. A government decides to increase the indirect tax on petrol. Petrol has an inelastic price elasticity of demand. What are likely to be the consequences? This question is from year 2022 May-June version 3 paper. The correct answer for this question is option B. When the government increases the indirect tax on petrol and petrol has inelastic price elasticity of demand, PED, the consequences are largely determined by how inelastic demand affects consumer behavior. Inelastic demand means that consumers do not significantly reduce their consumption of petrol even when the price increases, as petrol is often a necessity for most people. While the increase in price due to the tax may lead to a slight decrease in the quantity of petrol bought, this reduction will be relatively small. In other words, people will still need petrol for essential purposes such as commuting and transportation, so the demand remains relatively stable despite the higher price. On the other hand, the government revenue will likely increase. Since the decrease in the quantity demanded is minimal, the government will collect more revenue from the increased tax on petrol. This is because the higher tax leads to higher prices, and with demand remaining relatively stable, consumers continue to purchase nearly the same amount of petrol. As a result, the additional tax revenue more than offsets the small decline in the quantity sold. In summary, when petrol has inelastic demand, the quantity of petrol bought decreases, but only slightly, and the government revenue increases as a result of the higher tax rate being applied to a stable quantity of petrol consumption. Moving to fourth question. The diagrams show the demand for and supply of Chinese steel. Government subsidies for the Chinese steel industry led to 200 million tons of excess output. Which diagram would represent the position after the subsidy but before the market adjusted? This question is from year 2022 February-March version 2 paper. The correct answer for this question is option C. When the government provides a subsidy to the Chinese steel industry, it lowers the cost of production for steel producers, which causes the supply curve to shift to the right. This means that at every price level, producers are now willing to supply more steel. However, the demand for steel remains unchanged, so the quantity supplied exceeds the quantity demanded at the new price level. This leads to a surplus in the market, specifically a 200 million ton excess output, as the quantity produced is higher than what consumers are willing to purchase at the current price. Since the market has not yet adjusted, the price remains above the new equilibrium level, and the excess output represents the difference between the amount of steel being produced and the amount demanded by consumers. In terms of the diagram, the position after the subsidy but before the market adjusts would show the supply curve shifted to the right due to the subsidy. The price at which this excess output occurs would be above the equilibrium price, indicating a surplus. The quantity supplied would be greater than the quantity demanded at this price level, illustrating the excess output. Therefore, the correct diagram would depict a rightward shift in the supply curve, a price above equilibrium, and a surplus representing the 200 million tons of excess steel. This is clearly shown in the diagram in option C. Moving to the fifth question. The diagrams show changes in the demand and supply curves for a good. Which diagram shows the effect of a government providing a subsidy for the good? This question is from year 2021 October-November version 1 paper. The correct answer for this question is option A. The diagram that shows the effect of a government subsidy should depict the supply curve shifting to the right, or downward, while the demand curve generally remains the same. The new equilibrium will occur at a higher quantity, and the price might be lower or unchanged, depending on how the subsidy is passed to consumers. This is very clearly seen in option A diagram. Moving to the sixth question. The diagram shows the imposition of a subsidy on a product supplied by a firm. Which area represents the total revenue of the firm including the subsidy? This question is from year 2021 October-November version 2 paper. The correct answer for this question is option D. The area of total revenue can be represented by a rectangle on the diagram. The height of the rectangle would be the price the firm receives, which is the price consumers pay plus the subsidy. The width of the rectangle would be the quantity of the goods sold, at the new equilibrium after the subsidy. This area captures both the price the firm receives from consumers and the subsidy the government provides to the firm. The total area represents the total revenue received by the firm, including the subsidy. In this question, this is seen in option D. The total revenue area will be rectangle OGHM. Moving to question 7. Why does a government provide certain goods and services in a mixed economic system? A. The government always provides goods more cheaply than private firms. B. The government considers only private costs and benefits. C. The government provides goods to prevent the development of monopolies. D. The government provides public goods because private firms cannot charge for them. This question is from year 2021 October-November version 3 paper. The correct answer to why a government provides certain goods and services in a mixed economic system is option D. The government provides public goods because private firms cannot charge for them. In a mixed economic system, both the private sector and the government play roles in the production and distribution of goods and services. There are certain types of goods, called public goods, which the government typically provides because the private sector cannot efficiently supply them. Public goods have two key characteristics: they are non-excludable, no one can be excluded from using the good, and non-rivalrous, one person's use does not reduce the availability of the good for others. Examples of public goods include national defense, public parks, street lighting, and clean air. Because private firms cannot easily charge individuals for these goods, since people can use them without directly paying, private firms are generally not willing to produce them, as they cannot make a profit. As a result, governments step in to provide these goods to ensure that they are available to all members of society, as the market would fail to do so. Moving to question 8. The market equilibrium wage rate is $10 per hour. What explains why the wage rate actually paid is $12 per hour? A. Employers are competing for labor. B. The government sets a minimum wage of $12 per hour. C. There is a surplus of skilled labor. D. Workers have received unpaid training. This question is from year 2021 October-November version 3 paper. The correct answer for this question is option B. The government sets a minimum wage of $12 per hour. The market equilibrium wage rate is the wage at which the quantity of labor supplied equals the quantity of labor demanded, in this case, $10 per hour. However, if the wage rate is actually $12 per hour, this could be due to government intervention, such as the implementation of a minimum wage law. A minimum wage is a legally mandated lowest wage that employers are required to pay workers. If the government sets the minimum wage at $12 per hour, then employers must pay at least this amount, even if the equilibrium wage rate in the market is lower, example, $10 per hour. This results in a wage rate that is higher than the market equilibrium rate. Moving to question 9. The diagram shows the market for a good. The equilibrium is at point X. The government fixes a minimum price for the good at P2. What will happen in the market as a result? This question is from year 2020 specimen version 1 paper. The correct answer for this question is option A. The market equilibrium will remain the same. We must know that if P2 is at or below the equilibrium price, the price floor would have no effect on the market. In this case, the price floor is essentially irrelevant because the market price is already higher than or equal to the minimum price. Producers and consumers would continue to interact at the equilibrium price, so there would be no excess supply, and the market equilibrium would remain unchanged. Moving to question 10. Governments sometimes intervene in the economy when the market fails. What is the most likely reason why government intervention may make the situation worse? A. Government decisions can take a long time to have an effect. B. Governments consider the views of both consumers and producers. C. Governments have more resources to calculate costs and benefits than private firms. D. Governments may take decisions to reduce negative externalities. This question is from year 2020 specimen version 1 paper. The correct answer for this question is option A. Government decisions can take a long time to have an effect. Government intervention can be necessary to correct market failures, such as externalities, e.g., pollution, provision of public goods, or monopolies. However, one potential downside of government intervention is that government decisions often take time to implement. Bureaucratic processes, policy formulation, and administrative delays can mean that by the time a policy is enacted and begins to have an effect, the market conditions may have already changed, or the issue may have worsened. For example, if the government introduces a tax to reduce pollution, it may take years for the policy to show results, during which time the damage caused by pollution could continue to grow. Similarly, large-scale infrastructure projects to address market failures might take years to complete, delaying the positive outcomes the government seeks. Moving to question 11. The government has an important role in mixed economies. Which function would it not perform? A. Distributing dividends from profits of state-owned enterprises. B. Employing workers to collect taxes. C. Investing in transport infrastructure projects. D. Producing goods in public corporations. This question is from year 2019 October-November version 2 paper. The correct answer for this question is option A, distributing dividends from profits of state-owned enterprises. In a mixed economy, the government has an important role in regulating markets, providing public goods and services, and addressing market failures. However, one function that the government would not typically perform is distributing dividends from profits of state-owned enterprises. State-owned enterprises, SOEs, are owned by the government, and any profits generated by these enterprises are usually reinvested into the enterprise itself, used to fund public services, or redirected into the general government budget. Distributing dividends is a function that is more typical of private firms, where profits are shared among shareholders. In a mixed economy, the government generally does not distribute dividends from SOEs to the public in the same way a private company would. Moving to question 12. The diagram shows the demand curve D1 and supply curve S1 for a good. The government introduces a subsidy to encourage production. What will be the total cost of the subsidy to the government? This question is from year 2019 May-June version 1 paper. The correct answer for this question is option B, $50. First, let us see subsidy per unit. After the subsidy is introduced, we can identify the price producers receive and the price consumers pay. Based on the question, it seems the price producers receive is $30 and the price consumers pay is $25. The subsidy per unit is the difference between these two prices. Here, subsidy per unit equals 30 minus 25 equals 5. Next, we see the quantity sold. From the diagram, the quantity sold after the subsidy is introduced is 10 units, at the new equilibrium after the subsidy has shifted the supply curve. Finally, the total cost of the subsidy is calculated by multiplying the subsidy per unit by the quantity sold. Total cost equals subsidy per unit times quantity sold equals 5 times 10 equals 50. Thank you so much for watching this video on mixed economic systems here on Topical Economics. I truly appreciate your time and interest in learning about key economic concepts through past paper multiple choice questions. I hope my detailed explanations and analysis of the correct answers have helped clarify these topics and provided you with a deeper understanding of how economic systems function. If you found the video useful, please consider liking, sharing, and subscribing for more content that makes economics both accessible and engaging. Feel free to leave any questions or feedback in the comments below. I'm always happy to help. Thanks again for being part of the Topical Economics community, and I look forward to bringing you more insightful content in the future.